So I'm going to do my best to guide you through some of the outputs of the Artificial Intelligence and Data Visitation Working Group. We are a group of about 160 persons, and these slides are not moving at all. Mostly, please visit our webpage and the online notes. Add yourselves. You can use the QR code to join today's meeting. I'd like you to say hello online to our moderators. We have Ann Cambon-Thompson online to help our online participants and elevate their questions to all of us. And we have Ryan O'Connor here from RDA Tiger to help us in the room. Hi, Ryan, and thank you and Tiger for joining us. We really appreciate it. The Artificial Intelligence and Data Visitation Working Group, as I mentioned, has about 160 persons, divided into 4 sub-teams. Those sub-teams have worked on 4 outputs together: the guidance on secure processing environments for artificial intelligence and data visitation, the guidance for informed consent in the context of AI and data visitation, the guidance for ethics committees and institutional review boards reviewing artificial intelligence and data visitation projects, and an AI Bill of Rights recommendation, which is to be helpful for any organization to implement for its own AI deployments, developers or organization which uses a vended AI product or a tool that is vended that now has AI features. So you might think of this landscape in a broad way that includes yourself. We have a couple of supporting outputs. One of them is a shared citation library, and the other one is a plenary pilot of a survey on AI use that was presented at an earlier RDA plenary. You might ask yourselves, what is data visitation? It helps for us to visit our definition of data visitation, referring to a process in which data sets are subject to analysis at a host location without the data ever leaving the host, where the analytical framework can be submitted by a third party external to the host, and the results can be returned to that third party. In other words, bringing analysis to the data and doing that in a way that you can have data transfer agreements or data visiting agreements that are not file-based, that allow software to visit data as well as persons to be authorized to access files. That's a nuance with a difference that enables AI and enables legal agreements around AI. Here you see our working group outputs in context. The outputs here on the right, I told you about in blue, our focus area to do a comprehensive global investigation of AI governance, inclusive of ethics, human rights, regulation, health, open science, evolving AI technologies and applications, focused on delivering state-of-the-art guidance for international reference and institutional implementation. The implementation part is very important in the RDA context. We're looking for adopters of elements or all parts of these guidelines, because we all wear different roles within our organizations and we all use AI in different ways within our organizations. You may find yourselves adopting one or more of the outputs and portions of one or more of the outputs. We have a number of opportunities: endorsement, adoption, and implementation of the guidances, implementation into open science platforms, guidance for training IRB and ethics committee members, ways of influencing research assessment, and an opportunity to think about how we can inform human rights in the context of artificial intelligence and data visitation. We address a number of challenges. the rapid proliferation of AI regulations. When we started, there were about 200 AI policies and laws on the books when we started 2 years ago. Now there are over 2,000 and growing. 70 new laws at the US state level alone in the past 2 years. This is incredible proliferation and a reason why RDA is a great place to convene conversations about this rapidly changing global landscape. Our project is one of the first attempts to address these questions at an EU and global scale. And what we prioritize is the inclusiveness of nations and regions, multidisciplinarity, representativeness across sectors, and an acknowledgement of policy pluralism. I told you about the 4 outputs and the supporting outputs, so we won't go into that in any great detail, except for to give you the information in the slide decks you can access through the QR code and the link. Ryan, you might pop the link in the notes for people. I think we have it at the top as well. Ayla Fekmeki, our co-chair, has worked on this pilot survey. We have the supporting output, our AIDV shared citation library. Here you can see, and in the AIDV, AI Bill of Rights output itself, after about page 7, you will see an informational section. It goes by global policy, by regional policy, into regional, national, state, and municipal laws governing AI around the world. And you're going to hear from RDA members today from those countries about some of those topics. So you'll see in this library everything tagged by country and AIDV subteam. The AI Bill of Rights recommendation, which I worked on, we had a mission to produce an AI Bill of Rights communique for the ES Future Project and RDA that promoted fundamental human rights and advanced trust in AI and federated systems for open science. I'd like to thank my co-chairs, Ayuchi, Shiny, Rona, and Yi Yang. We really enjoyed researching the global policies and thinking about how they allowed us to collaborate one with another. What we found looking at over 2,000 policies and laws as they evolved throughout the world, where the AI governance can be approached from a human rights, risk-based or safety-based motivation, or a combination of all 3. They're not mutually exclusive. Organizations like RDA and the European Open Science Cloud have a remit to go beyond a risk-based rhetoric that dominates many corporate AI governance strategies. Due to our open international membership, we have a need and an opportunity to prioritize and accommodate the perspectives and disparities of and between developing nations and countries alongside the needs of companies and countries at the forefront of AI development and adoption. When we look at the increasing call for global coordination of AI governance, we call on European Open Science Cloud members and the RDA to take up leading roles in allowing practitioners to center human rights, including the rights of model creators and deployers, as core principles in AI and data governance, research, development, and deployment activities. Now I'll lead you through the core of the adoptable portion of the AI Bill of Rights and allow you to find some elements that might help you adopt a responsible AI strategy in your organization or project. Here you see the need for acceptable use policies, the need to establish an AI working group or oversight committee. Their job will be not just to oversee your AI systems, but to allocate resources, develop and maintain AI governance policies and procedures. You also need an AI training and education strategy. These are really integral to the successful operationalization of AI and AI policy. If you don't offer learning opportunities for AI in your organization or project, either IT, your users, or your finance department will lose interest and lose their ability to see the ROI before your project is complete. So it's really important to do this portion. You'll need to develop an AI impact assessment strategy, more on that next, an ongoing monitoring plan. Are you going to have a human in the loop, over the loop, a human out of the loop? How are you going to monitor your AI and how it's meeting your organizational needs? How will you be doing transparency, notice, and disclosure about your use of AI, your training data? How are you going to do vendor due diligence when vendors include new AI components in their platforms? Are you going to review your licensing agreements? Are you going to review what information you can get back from that vendor about your own users and how they're allowed to use that information? Are they going to be able to use it to train their platform? Is that copacetic with your organization's current policies and the way you initially granted that contract? And finally, you'll need to test your AI systems for bias and identify the different types of biases that could be influencing your system. They could be systemic, human, computational. Mitigating bias requires action at each phase of the AI lifecycle. We mentioned impact assessment, or you might be have heard the acronym AIIA. This is what that's referring to. Because it's essential to govern AI systems that can potentially cause harms, it's essential to assess the impacts of your AI systems. So we recommend the following elements, and these are largely, as you'll see in our AI Bill of Rights deliverable, adopted from Carol P.O. recommendations. These are that you will determine organizationally what will be your AI system impact assessment process, what will be the way you document your AI system impact assessments. Will you document them on a periodic basis? Who will they be released to first? Who will be allowed to read them? How will you move from one to another? You might think about whether annual reports have to tell a continuing story. Here, you want to be able to tell a continuing story to your organization's leadership and your impacted users or your impacted clients about the way your system impact assessments are succeeding or failing in telling you about your ROI on your AI and whether you're having any impacted harm parties. You'll also need to look at your AI system impact on individuals and groups of individuals, and you'll have to concern yourself with how you will be assessing societal impacts of your AI systems. Finally, you're going to need, once you've come to within your working group, understanding of these 4 elements for your project or your organization's adoption of AI, a system impact assessment process. Who will do it? When will they do it? Where are they getting the money to be able to do it? Do they have the right team? How often are you going to do it? Where does the data live? Who governs it? Then we get to AI alignment. This is the 3rd portion of these recommendations that we encourage you to adopt, and tell us if you adopt. This is a safety research process that aims to ensure your AI systems achieve desired outcomes. If you're creating or implementing an AI policy, you need to be able to define those desired outcomes and document the process for monitoring, measuring, and logging where you achieve and where you fall short of those desired outcomes and benefits of your use of AI or of your AI policy in governing your AI. Are you violating your policy? How often and in what context? And any group or creating or implementing an AI policy might do these things to get aligned AI for their project or org. Consider auditable detection for bias. We described that in the slide before. So you can expose cases where your decision logic is in violation of your agreed upon ethics. You'll notice that you have to agree upon it first before you can find it. Consider auditable detection for privacy violations. If you're doing privacy leak detection, how are you going to know when your decision logic is in violation of your agreed upon ethics ensuring privacy within your training data sets or within your user outputs if they are reused for training or reused for shared prompting? Finally, you'll need to have a control and escalation process. Many of us have received a notice in our email or a hard copy mail. Your data has been part of a data breach at your bank, at your hospital, at your streaming channel. What happens next? You need to assign a responsibility for investigation, a process for that investigation, a process for notification and disclosure of any violations, and a process for reconciliation or restitution to impacted individuals and groups so that you can mitigate and correct the consequences of non-aligned AI. So usually when you get that notice that your data has been part of a breach, what are you offered? Maybe a year's worth of credit monitoring. You're not offered any kind of financial return for your time. You're not offered any kind of compensation typically that outweighs the violation you have experienced in your data. So when you think about the ways that a non-aligned AI can be worse than the data breaches we're already experiencing, you really need to think about what will be your control and escalation process. And is it going to be better or worse than data breach notification processes we have today? Next, I'd like to tell you about our output on guidance for informed consent in artificial intelligence and data visitation. Anne Cambone-Thompson is online with us, our co-chair, Gautier Chicheng. Could you stand up, Gautier, and wave for us? You'll hear more from Gautier in a moment. Christy Hackett. Our fellow Luis Jacob Bretanon, he is online, and I'm not sure if Naomi is with us today or not, but together they create this wonderful output. Here I give you a brief overview, and in this output on the RDA website, you can dig deeper into how informed consent in the context of AI and data visitation at both global and European levels may need to change, and why, depending on your concept and practice of informed consent currently and how adaptable or adapted to AI it already is, and some of the challenges with informed consent in today's global socio-technological landscape. This group took a methodological approach that included a preliminary literature review you can read about in the output, conceptual analysis of the fundamental and practical principles for the use of informed consent, and a proposed set of recommendations at different levels. I'll give you a quick summary here, where you can find yourself in this grid and within the text of the output in great detail about if you're within a governmental agency and you're looking at a global governance concern for informed consent, do you need to raise stakeholders' awareness of the use of broad, dynamic, and procedural informed consent frameworks in the collection of sensitive data, or in the context of research and development? And you can find your way through the grid to access the information in this output. Next, we have guidance for ethics committees or institutional review boards reviewing AI and DV projects. This sub-team has members with us today online as well, and was headed by Ailef Ekmeki and Chalice and Valerie and others. And I encourage you to think here about your current ethics committee setup. How many here have had to put a project forward to an ethics committee or an institutional review board? About a half a dozen of us. How many have served on an ethics committee or institutional review board? About 4 or 5 of us, 6, 7. So this is an audience who care about this output, because it talks to us about the limitations of our current IRBs or ethics committees in handling AI projects in a timely, accurate manner, and the need to build multidisciplinary review committees. Often this is done through terms. When you're appointed to your ethics committee, terms may no longer be enough. Now you may need people on that committee who are more knowledgeable about artificial intelligence. You're going to need to identify potential risks of AI along with the risks that are already inherent in the project in front of you. And you're going to need to develop materials to assist with regulatory review of research that includes AIDV, and that may bring you into contact with others you're not used to cooperating with organizationally. You're going to need to develop targeted training programs for your IRBs and probably detect ancillary committees to assist them with review of AI and DV. This could be your legal team. This could be your IT team. This could be your high performance computing unit. There are a number of different scenarios here, and you'll also need to evaluate ethical issues presented and avoided by the use of AIDV in individual projects. Next, we'll hear from Ugochi Akanegwu visiting with us from Nigeria. Ugochi, are you with us online? And can you see Ugochi?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening. From here.
Hi,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can the room hear you, Ugochi? Yes, you're well heard, Ugochi.
Okay.
We will advance your slides, and Ryan will help you to deliver your presentation. I have you turned up high, and if you have questions, promote them through Ryan or Ann online.
Okay. So I should go ahead?
Please, Ugochi.
Can I go ahead? Okay.
Yes, please.
Right. Okay. My name is Ugochi Okengwu from University of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. We're looking at the guidance of AI data visitation, the secure processing environment for AI and data visitation. And we know that AI algorithms often rely on vast and diverse data sets to train and modify our models. So the most important thing to ensure is to be the accuracy of every data point that you're using in developing your model. Next slide, please. So during our working group, we were able to define data visitation. The data visitation here refers to the process of accessing, retrieving, and processing data stored in various forms, often for purposes like analysis, transformation, or presentation. So the concept can apply to multiple contexts like databases, data processing systems, and visualization frameworks, especially in application to open science environment where researchers, assess these different resources we put in our different environments. So we should also ensure why people are visiting these open science resources, that there will be data ownership protection, and they will also comply to most of the rules and guidelines in the secured environment. And also, we need to also ensure that data privacy and security are maintained during the processing. Next slide, please. So we have some such challenges in this AI data visitation processing environment, which most of us are already aware of. We know of internal threats like unauthorized access. You could give access to somebody to some parts of your resources, and the person could also get access to other things that you may not want the person to have access to. We have one of the challenges is data leakage. We also have external threats, which we know about phishing and hacking and other cyber attacks that we experience every day on the internet. Then we're also looking at the AI-specific threats, model inversion attacks and data poisoning, which happens most times in our real-time AI models, whereby the data sets, the models can be poisoned by that data poisoning, or due to model inversion, you can have your model do something different from what you already planned for. Next slide, please. So the secure processing environment, it is an environment designed to protect data while enabling its use by researchers. Looking at all we have said about the challenges, so we are also looking at a possibility of this having a secure processing environment where researchers can view different resources that are being placed there without being attacked, those challenges being taken care of. So some of the key components we are considering is privacy preserving techniques like differential privacy, homomorphic encryption, federated learning. These are some of the techniques that can be implemented while having this processing environment in place. Monitoring and auditing, regular auditing of user activity in this environment, data encryption, encrypting data in transit and at rest, controlled access, restricting data access to only authorized users by giving them access rules based on their rules. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. So having looked at some of these things we have mentioned, looking at the key components of a secure processing environment, we also are looking at proposing some of these techniques and how we can really get this done. First of all, we looked at isolated computing environments. We know we have things like sandbox virtual machines, whereby AI model developers can do their testing in an environment that is isolated, untested code changes and outright experimentation from the production environment or repository to avoid attackers in different forms, invading into the secured environment, the processing environment. We're also looking at implementing zero trust architecture, whereby you assume that breach and verify each step. You don't trust, every step must be verified. Zero trust, you don't, no matter, even if the person has authentication, person has to have authorization, different levels of access control should be implemented. Then we have the multi-layered defense strategies where you can have the firewalls, intrusion detections, and data monitoring tools in place. Next slide, please. Then we are looking at the legal and ethical considerations where developing this secured processing environment. We already know of the GDPR and California Consumer Privacy Act. So these regulations that are already in place and these acts that are already in place should be considered while developing this secured processing environment. Next slide. So in conclusion, we're saying that AI applications increasingly rely on large volumes of data, necessitating need for secure environment where this data can be processed without compromising privacy or your security. While involving in data visitation processes, we should ensure that data remains within the secured environment. And ensuring data security and privacy is not just a technical requirement, but a social and ethical responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ugochi. I'm really glad you're doing that. Thank you and your sub-team. Next, we will be hearing about regulatory evolution around the globe. Yes?
Some questions as well.
If you can save them to the end, or if you have a quick one for Ugochi.
Well, what's this?
Go for it.
Because I'd be interested in seeing where you see new requirements emerging from the others, because basic theories.
Is the question for me? Because you're not audible.
Yeah, we'll type it into the chat for you, Yugochi. He's asked
Okay.
where, because of AI, you see need for new regulation.
And how this differs from whatever the five saves model.
Yes, you will
theories.
see some of that in the output.
Mhm.
So if you visit the output online, you see all the detail.
Okay.
And we'll put that, give that, the link is in the shared notes if you're in there.
Sure, I was just
Yeah,
thinking whether it might be a quick answer to that rather than
Yeah.
diving through.
yeah, there's no quick answer to this question. That's why there are now 2,000 laws about it. Next, we have Dr. Chitang. He and his colleague Lisa will be talking to us about regulatory evolution in Europe. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much. So hello, everybody. I am Gauthier Chassin. I'm a lawyer at the INSERM, the French Institute of Health and Medical Research. And I'm happy today to give you an overview of the content of the new AI Act adopted by the European Union in June 2024 with regard to the recommendations formulated by the RDA Artificial Intelligence Data Working Group. So first, the AI Act set up harmonized and transversal rules for ensuring that only lawful, safe, and ethical AI systems enter the European market. Data visitation is not at the heart of this act, but the AI ecosystem is at the heart of this regulation. It fixes rules that are consistent with the EU values, in particular with the Charter of Fundamental Rights in the European Union and the guidelines for trustworthy artificial intelligence. This including the protection of human rights, but also of democracy, of the rule of law, and environmental protection. And consistent rules with other existing EU regulations, such as the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and the Medical Device Regulation, for example. So the Act adopts a human-centric approach to AI systems. It set up a classification mechanism, the system, and attached proportional rules for governing them and related operational data with requirements that are applicable throughout the life cycle of the system. So this, the Act provides a broad legal definition of AI systems, and it applies to those that are intended to be placed on the market or put into service in the European Union, regardless of where they have been developed or manufactured, of the machine learning techniques that is used, nor of the professional sector in which they are intended to be used, and whether they are standalone devices or a component of a product, such as a robot. This includes general purpose artificial intelligence models, such as, for example, the GPT model that can handle many different tasks for different purposes and be integrated in downstream applications. These models are particularly framed due to the specific challenges they raise, notably in terms of calculation power, but also in terms of risks of manipulation of users, of hallucinations, and of disinformation, for example. The Act addresses scientific research with a balance between regulation and encouragement of innovation. It recognizes the importance of research in the field of AI, such as in particular in medicine, for example, while ensuring that ethical and safety standards are respected. In order to preserve freedom of research, it excludes from its scope the AI systems and models specifically and solely used for the purpose of research. However, any system that is available on the market and used for the research will be subject to the provision of the Act. The Act also supports research and innovation by creating AI regulatory sandboxes as pre-deployment experimental environments supervised by competent authorities, plus specific rules for real-world testing of the devices and measures for small and medium enterprises, as well as measures for open source artificial intelligence system. So the Act defines and regulates the activities of the provider of the system, of the deployer, and of other operators while establishing new governance bodies at EU levels, with the AI office that will be attached to the European Commission and the European AI Board, which will both notably provide implementation guidelines and tools for regulated entities. It is also establishing a multi-stakeholder advisory forum, so composed of different entities such as academia, civil society representatives, industry, etc. And in addition, the Act requires that member states establish a competent market surveillance authority for monitoring the application of the regulation and for cooperating at a European level. The Act adopts a risk-based approach to regulation and a 4-level classification mechanism identifying systems and practices that raise unacceptable risks and that are then forbidden. Those that raise a high risk to health, safety, and fundamental rights because they are used in a sensitive area such as employment, for example, or because they are part of regulated devices such as medical devices. The Act focuses on these systems that are authorized but subject to conformity assessment and certification. Then we have systems that are subject to specific transparency requirements without being mandatorily high-risk systems. And finally, systems presenting minimal or no risks, which are just permitted with no restrictions. So regarding the AI Bill of Rights, we see that the AI Act is addressing most of the recommendations formulated. It provides legal definitions which are aligned with other works at international level, and the EU is actively working with its partners, other countries, and international organizations to develop a consistent global regulatory framework. It fixes red lines and prioritizes requirements on high-risk systems. It obliges the provider and deployer to be accountable and to maintain a high level of quality of the system. It creates a new governance mechanism allowing stakeholders consultation, that's very important, along the regulatory process, and voluntary soft law mechanisms. It includes considerations of cultural and populational specificities and is a forward-looking regulation that should be resilient to socio-technological changes. However, it is not specifically addressing the methodology to perform risk assessments, nor the specific rules that are applying to the use of AI in scientific research. There is only general references to ethical guidelines. In addition, challenges remain regarding privacy protection and the implementation of the data subjects' rights granted by the GDPR regarding, granted by the GDPR, issues regarding sectoral implementations because we have interplay of different EU laws. Practical implementation of the cooperation mechanism also will be a challenge. Liability engagement rules will also need to be further specified, and of course, implementation cost is not covered by the regulation. Concerning the guidance on informed consent, the topic is only indirectly and partially addressed with no general consent nor opt-out rights granted to individuals. However, it is fixing more or less directly important rules that will pave the way towards responsible informed consent practices in the future. Indeed, the Act grants a right to develop AI literacy for providers and deployer staffs, and for all users and persons affected by the use of the system, a right to transparency, to human oversight and explanation of AI-based decisions, a right not to be subject to subliminal manipulations, a right to provide informed consent for participating into real-world testing of the devices before deployment, and a right to personal data protection, as we have seen with general reference to the GDPR. Remaining issues relate to the GDPR state of art, of course, because we are remaining in a national law fragmentation context when it comes to informed consent requirements, particularly. So difficulties to reach explainable AI systems that will enable individuals to be informed and make autonomous choices, and the potential difficulties to maintain competent human alternatives to AI in the future. Regarding the two last deliverables, The topics are unaddressed because they are out of purpose regarding the Act. So regarding the guidance on ethics committees, the Act simply states that in research, it is important to respect, recognize ethical and professional standards, and it makes reference to the European guidelines for trustworthy AI and related self-assessment tools for developers. So we have clues that can be used by the committees, but it is not really central in the Act. And finally, regarding secure data, secure processing environments, the Act only refers to the GDPR and to the other acts under preparation that will regulate common European data spaces under regulation, and you will have a specific presentation on that. So to conclude, we can see that the EU Act, AI Act, is a major achievement, but that it is not really covering all the issues raised by AI, and that the RDA AIDV recommendations are really opening new avenues for further regulatory advances. Thank you very much, and muchas gracias. Thank you.
Next up, we'll have Lisa Ferrial. Go ahead, Rodrigo.
I have a question.
Yes, please. Yes.
As a citizen, how you
Yeah.
prosecute any violator of AI that's regarding to your human rights?
Yeah.
Is it in agency? Is
Actually,
regular trial?
you go to a regular trial mainly based on the responsibility for defective products. Otherwise, you can also engage responsibility of the human behind the system if he's, faulty. But this is a real next issue that we will tackle at European level, to disentangle all these complexities to favor the access to justice. Thank you.
Next, we hear from Lisa Ferrial on building sovereign data spaces for AI innovation in the European Health Data Space Regulation. Ryan will help Lisa with her slides. You can type in the chat. Lisa is joining us from France. I want to know, with a quick show of hands, how many can stay an extra 10 minutes so we can hear from our colleagues in Australia and Africa. Awesome. So we'll stay an extra 10 minutes till 11:40, if that's okay with everyone in the room. Thank you, Ryan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Lisa.
You can hear me? It's fine?
It's good.
Oh, okay, sorry. So, hello everyone. I'm Lisa Ferrial, PhD student in health law in the same research team as Gauthier. I work on the subject of governance of health data reuse for scientific research in Europe and in France. And I'm going to try to outline the contribution of the future European health data space as a sovereign data space for innovation and in AI. Next slide, please. So the European Health Data Space Regulation, which will shortly be adopted, has two main objectives. The first one is to improve the primary use of health data for continuity of care in Europe. And the second one is to facilitate the secondary use or reuse of health data for purposes provided for and authorized by the regulation. And the presentation will focus on this point. So the main objective is to propose a common European governance framework for access to health data, which will have an impact at different levels, European, national, and local level. The COVID-19 crisis has highlighted the need to share health data in compliance with the FAIR principles, but also to ensure that health data is as open as possible while respecting the principle of minimization. So synergies are therefore planned between the EHDS and the European Open Science Cloud with the aim of opening up data. Next slide, please. So on the governance of the secondary use of health data within the EHDS, the regulation stipulates that at least one health data access body must be set up in each member state. The aim is not to centralize the health data available at the European level, but to connect these different bodies on a decentralized basis. And the dedicated cross-border technical infrastructure will be created, which is called Health Data at EU. A catalog of description of the data sets available in each country will be set up by the European Commission. And one of the major changes brought about by the regulation is the obligation for health data holders to describe the health data they hold and to make it accessible if an access authorization is granted by the health data access body to an applicant. With regard to the autonomy of individuals concerned by the reuse of health data, member states will introduce an opt-out mechanism, and consent may be required under national law for 4 types of health data, including genetic and genomic data. Next slide, please. So the health data concerned is very broad, covering personal data, but also non-personal data. Here we talk about anonymized data and data covered by intellectual property rights. Provision is made for secondary uses of authorized health data, and in addition to scientific research, this includes, for example, public policy, education, and teaching. Prohibited purposes are also provided for, such as discriminatory practices against individuals or activities in conflict with the ethical provisions of national laws. And the principles is access to anonymized data and subject to justification provided by the applicant, access to pseudonymized data. And data will be accessed via a secure processing environment to control the access, and only non-personal data can be downloaded here. Next slide, please. So on the contribution of the EHDS to the development of artificial intelligence systems, the EHDS provide access to large quantities of data, improving so the visibility of available data. And a data quality and utility label will be included in the EHDS for training. Will be included in the EHDS to ensure the quality of the data used. The secondary use of health data for training, testing, and evaluating algorithm has been linked to the purpose of scientific research. And finally, the regulation provides for collaboration between the EHDS board and the European AI board created by the regulations. Next slide, please. From the point of view of the sovereignty, the model proposed by the EHDS is based on the values and rules of the EU and helps to increase the European technological sovereignty. Rules are imposed on the storage and processing of personal data within the EU. And for non-personal data, data involving a risk of re-identification is protected when transferred outside the EU. Next slide, please. So if we look at the recommendations made by the AI data visitation working group, we can see that some of these recommendations are provided for in the EHDS regulations, while others remain open to question. So first, regarding the AI Bill of Rights, the trusted governance of AI as recommended by this deliverable can be seen as facilitated by the collaboration mandated between the European governance bodies created by the EHDS regulation and the AI Act. On the deliverable of informed consent, it shows that the EHDS reconsiders the classic form of consent in the context of the EHDS and bases the protection of individual rights and interest on the planned governance measures. However, questions remain here as to whether the implementation of the opt-out mechanism for individuals will be truly harmonized to promote the secondary use of health data, including for the development of AI. Next slide, please. Regarding the recommendation on the central role of ethics committees, the EHDS provides for an ethical assessment of requests for access to health data based on national law. Here is carried out by the health data access bodies or by existing ethics committees. This will require the assessing committees to have sufficient resources to assess requests, particularly for innovative projects involving AI. The provisions here are not clear on how the coordination of different ethical opinions will be managed as part of a project involving access to health data in different countries. And finally, on the upcoming deliverable recommending the use of TQ processing environments for AI and data visitation, the EHDS has based its system of secondary use of health data on the use of a secure processing environment to limit the risks to individual rights. Next slide, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Now, in interest of time, I will tell you just a little snapshot because you can see in these, awesome. You can see in shared notes, these slides. Here we hear a little bit about policy and regulatory landscape in US, really starting in 2019, and then with the issuance of the AI Governance Act. The US-EU TTC joint roadmap has output a glossary that includes a shared terminology and taxonomy for the terms you see here and their technical and legal definition for use in cross-cutting trade agreements. I encourage you to see this. This is probably one of the best US involved outputs. We also have the President's Office of Science, Technology, and Policy Blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. This is a unique document because it centers the care and need of the citizen to be secure and emphasizes these 5 categories for creating an AI Bill of Rights. It also includes a companion implementation guide. Our National Institute Standards and Technology has an AI risk management framework. This is more of a technical specification for risk management in context of AI than it is a regulation or policy. It goes through these 3 types of risks: harm to people, organization, and ecosystem, and provides examples of potential harms and harm parties that can be related to AI systems at each of these levels. This is a really terrific document and group with a lot of content and context for each nuanced activity in AI that can be of great help to all of us. And finally, and recently, we have an executive order on the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and use of artificial intelligence from President Biden's administration, where they emphasize that artificial intelligence policies must be consistent with the administration's dedication to advancing equity and civil rights, and that the administration cannot and will not tolerate the use of AI to disadvantage those who are already too often denied equal opportunity and justice. From hiring to housing to healthcare, we have seen what happens when AI use deepens discrimination and bias rather than improving quality of life. And this is just a snippet from this this executive order, but I invite you all to read it because it shows the way the administration can direct and drive AI. As you all know, we just had an election, so this administration is on its way out. We will see what happens next. And at the state and local level, as I mentioned, regulations are proliferating. Last year alone, the number of AI-related regulations grew by 56%. Many states have AI regulation on the books. And I'm going to turn it over to Canada, and we'll hear a little bit more about the northern half of the Americas.
Otherwise known as America's hat. Thank you, Natalie. Okay. I want to make sure we have enough time for colleagues who come after me. So I'll dive right in to provide just a sort of brief snapshot of AI regulation in Canada currently. We really sort of have this emphasis on industry and innovation, for better or for worse. Some critiques would say for worse. This really has involved sort of a stimulation approach. So if we look at the governance areas, generally speaking, that have been the focus of AI regulation as of late, industry innovation is at the top there on the right-hand side in this green chart, followed by technology production and use, AI research, and so on. It's important to note, of course, that this is very much an evolving landscape, and we've noticed some key shifts in recent years. So in Canada, we're seeing a shift from general privacy protection towards AI-specific governance, and a second shift from voluntary frameworks to more mandatory frameworks in recent years as well. However, despite that shift, we currently have no national regulatory framework specific to AI in place. So this is a snapshot of a chart from a article that was published this year, looking at sort of a survey of AI regulatory initiatives in Canada up until 2022. And what this really the take-home message here is, if you look at sort of that big light gray section of the bars, we have, they reviewed over 80 initiatives, and really the majority of them, vast majority, are characterized as programs rather than policies or ethics statements. So all of that to say, we have a lot of programs, a lot of initiatives going on, but again, very little in way of hard law to date. So this is sort of a visual timeline. I'd be remiss not to mention that, Canada has been very much engaged and sort of at the forefront of AI and innovation for a number of decades. So going back to 1983, we had our Institute for Advanced Research, or CFAR, launching the AI Robotics and Society program. Lots and lots going on in way of research and innovation, but we really don't see policy initiatives popping up until the last 5-10 years. In 2017, Canada was the first country to launch a national or pan-Canadian AI strategy that was focused on 3 pillars: so commercialization, standards development, and really heavily focused on talent acquisition and research excellence. Now, in 2022, we had the Artificial Intelligence and Data Act, or AIDA, put forth in Parliament, introduced as part of a larger bill, Bill C-27. And as of last year, because that is still, the act is still not enforced, it's still in its draft form, we've been relying on sort of this patchwork of voluntary measures. So for example, we have a voluntary code of conduct on the responsible development and management of advanced generative AI systems, and a document outlining principles for responsible, trustworthy, and privacy protective generative AI technologies. So I'm going to focus for a few minutes on the real meaty piece of legislation, or to be meaty piece, I should say, still under development. As I mentioned, this is the first comprehensive AI regulation framework in Canada, currently under parliamentary review. It does take a risk-based approach to regulate the development and use of AI systems, with an emphasis on what they refer to as high-impact AI systems, which I'll touch on in a moment. The Act seeks to prohibit reckless or malicious uses of AI, and it proposes the creation of a novel AI and data commissioner role in Canada. They also stipulate financial penalties for non-compliance. So what kind of systems are we talking about? Well, AIDA, there's an accompanying document that sort of gives you a sense of the types of AI systems of interest here. So those are bolded in this first column. Just give you a quick snapshot. So for example, high impact systems may be those that provide screening or impact people's access to services or employment, including credit, for example. The use of biometric systems used for identification and inference. Systems that can influence human behavior at scale. So AI-powered online content recommendation would be an example. And lastly, another key area is systems that are critical to health and safety. Examples of that would be autonomous driving systems and triage decision-making systems within the healthcare industry. So since this act was brought forth 2 years ago, there's been quite a lot of literature outlining its strengths, but also its weaknesses. And I've listed here some of the key gaps and opportunities from the literature. So while it does have this focus on risk assessment, the definitions and thresholds are still quite vague. So there's a lot of wiggle room there, and it'll be interesting to see how that gets materialized in the months to come. Also, others have criticized the Act for having too narrow a focus on individual harms and this need to really address broader societal impacts of AI. It also only applies to the private sector, so that's a key gap. There have been critiques claiming lack of alignment and interoperability with international standards. And, you know, especially when it was first released, there were a lot of questions around whether the legislation was rushed. So common sort of narrative and rhetoric in Canada at that time was, you know, does Canada want to get this right, or do they want to get it right now? And importantly, there's increasing calls for more participatory AI governance to improve public trust, which is at an all-time low in Canada with respect to AI. And this should be done through increased transparency and public consultation. So this will be my last meaty slide. So in terms of the relevance of the AIDA to our deliverables, the most overlap we see is with the AI Bill of Rights, which Natalie gave us a nice overview of earlier. So this is partially addressed in the Act. Some provisions are included, including concerns regarding bias and discrimination. However, a common critique of the Act in its current form is that it does take this industry-first approach, and that, you know, we're just not robust enough in really addressing concerns around human rights and protections. In terms of informed consent, this is not directly addressed in the Act. However, they do rely on and make reference to existing privacy laws in Canada. The same applies for the guidance for ethics committees. So this is also not addressed in the Act. However, there's a number of guiding principles within AIDA that would be relevant and may inform the work of IRBs in the future. And lastly, guidance on secured processing environments is not directly addressed. It's sort of out of the scope of this Act. So I would conclude this by saying the AIDV working group recommendations are actually quite timely and relevant in Canada. And many elements of those recommendations may be instructive as Canadian AI regulation continues to evolve.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that presentation about Canada. Next, we'll hear from Natha Bharathy, who is joining us from Australia. He's going to tell us about the AI evolution in Australia and New Zealand. Nana, Ryan will advance your slides, and
sure.
We'll be
next one, please. Yeah.
Right
so welcome to the landscape down under. So we would can go to the next slide, right? Thank you. So currently there are no overarching or comprehensive AI specific legislation. So what we are doing with both in Australia and New Zealand are repurposing various existing regulations. And also in doing so, there are three main pieces of regulations that come into picture. One on human rights, that is an anti-discrimination law governing bias and inequitability in providing AI services. Other one is a consumer protection in both countries that address providing a fit AI system. And the third one is it's about the Data Privacy Act in both countries. So these are old or well-ensconced acts. They have been repurposed, and that allows the legal system to respond flexibly, at the same time wait and watch. But that does not mean the space has been quiet. It has been bursting with a lot of activities that are voluntary and guideline in nature. Because there is an AI legislation in horizon. If you could move to the next one, Ryan. So this is a set of activities. Many of them are, as Christy said, many of them are programs. and so on. And a number of them are also guidelines and standards, primarily guidelines. So starting with this, initially starting with the action plan and so on, I would only, without name calling, if I may point that way, there are AI ethics principles which highlighted the principles that have been adopted, which is significant because currently Australian framework is principles driven and guidelines-based voluntary framework. And so it also looks at the principles are similar to what you find elsewhere, except there is an interesting eighth one called contestability. So it has things like human and societal well-being, human-centered value, fairness, transparency, etc. But contestability is one that has also been explicitly stated. And so this comes out of AI ethics framework. And then also the industry organizations have been working with various standard bodies and so on. There has been an action plan about 2 years ago that actually set the stage for many of these things. But what is actually interesting are the recent changes. One is a Privacy Act reform is happening. So we would expect some significant changes there. And so that would, but also the guardrails that came out recently. The guardrail emphasize a number of concepts, including risk management, governance, stakeholder participation, testing and monitoring of AI, human oversight, and supply chain transparency, and to name a few. But these guardrails are meant to work with the rest of the frameworks and the system. So it is meant to be still adaptable. And but developers are encouraged to engage openly with the stakeholders in this. The privacy review is quite interesting. It actually makes it very stringent in number of cases, especially for invasion of privacy, serious invasion of privacy, and it tightens the law around and the penalties around these, and also including for it criminalizes doxing, any exemptions that are given to smaller businesses would be withdrawn, and then there would be also a strengthened child privacy act and child privacy protection, and so all this with this we can. There are also a number of industry specific ones, but we can move to the next one. Next slide, Ryan. Yeah. So New Zealand is not that different, except while Australian one is more on the principle-based and voluntary, New Zealand is also principle-based. It's also voluntary. But again, where it actually stands out is about the inclusiveness and about the marginalized groups and particularly the indigenous rights. And it is a risk-based approach. Like New Zealand, emphasis on transparency, accountability, and voluntary inclusion. We can go to the next one, please. So in between the two, it's a number of things are evolving, and so Australia and New Zealand offer a flexible approach. And whereas as opposed to some of the more prescriptive approaches that have evolved elsewhere, including a number of other Asian countries. But what is you would also find that there is it's still less structured, but we expect to see and a new legislation being discussed, at least if in the near future. And so in the interest of time, there are 4 aspects that these are covering, and I would leave the rest for any questions, and I will pass on to the next speaker.
Thank you, Nana. Does anyone have questions before we move on to Ugochi in Africa with a little summary of Nigeria? Ugochi, welcome, and are you online with us still? Oh, yes?
Yes.
Great, take it away. Ryan will advance your slide.
Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you so much. We all know the AI policies. Everybody's talking about the regulations. There are guidelines, regulations, frameworks established by our governments, organizations to enable us use AI technologies safely and ethically. So the legal framework that should govern most of these our AI applications and ethics should form around upholding the value of human dignity at the end of the day, adherence to non-discrimination, gender equality, fairness, diversity in AI system, promoting transparency, that is very important, explainability, and the clarity in our AI systems, and also protecting democracy against AI threats, which is one of the things most people are afraid of, that AI is coming to take over our jobs, and we need to get these frameworks and all these rules that can assure people that AI will not take over us, rather they will help us. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so I was able to see that AI policies and laws in Africa have evolved over the years. Most of these technologies come to us and we'll embrace them. So I found out that Egypt got theirs in 2019, Rwanda 2022, Senegal 2023, Benin Republic 2023 too. But Nigeria, which is my country and the focus, fortunately got a draft in this August 2024. And thank God this plenary did not happen before August. Maybe I wouldn't have had something to say about Nigeria. So the other countries are still under development in Africa. But specifically in this August 2024, the Federal Ministry of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy released the draft of Nigeria's first national artificial intelligence strategy. And there are 5 key strategic pillars of this particular, will I call it AI policy in Nigeria. We're looking at, it's bordering around building foundational AI infrastructures, building and sustaining a world-class AI ecosystem at the end of the day, accelerating AI adoption and sector transformation, ensuring responsible and ethical AI development and deployment, developing a robust AI governance framework. Next slide, please. So Nigeria's effort in AI policy development was really championed by 2 bodies in Nigeria. The National Information Technology Development Agency called NIDA, and the National Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics, along other stakeholders, spearheading Nigeria's advancement in AI. So seeing AI as a compelling force to drive the impact of positive change, these agencies unveiled the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy document in August, as we said earlier. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Next, we will hear from our fellow Luis Retinan. He will be talking to us about AI regulation in the Philippines and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Luis, if you are still awake and with us, we are here to hear you.
Yes, could you all hear me? I'm still awake actually. I just had some coffee. So good day everyone. So I'm Luis Jacob Retanan, a research fellow of the Artificial Intelligence and Data Visitation Group. So today I'll be discussing AI governance trends in Singapore, the Philippines, and ASEAN. So focusing on our guidance on informed consent and its aim to make the practice adaptable to highly evolving AI technology. So next slide, please. So we can see here, so let us first look at Singapore's AI governance. So leading the 2024 AI Preparedness Index, Singapore has demonstrated a robust commitment to AI development. And its 2023 National AI Strategy emphasizes value creation by empowering businesses and communities. However, instead of legislating comprehensive AI laws, Singapore relies on the AI Verify, which is an open source software toolkit ensuring AI development and use in the country aligns with global standards without limiting innovation. So in comparison, so in contrast, the Philippines ranks 65th in AI preparedness, unfortunately, and despite individual efforts by agencies, lack of coordination hinders progress. So the nation's limited AI regulation uh, House Bill, there's a proposal, so House Bill 10567, which focuses narrowly on issues like deepfakes. So this reflects low technical capacity and awareness, unfortunately, and which leads to a much more rigid approach in the country. And for the regionally, ASEAN is fostering a collective approach to AI governance. Although member countries vary in their AI capabilities, the bloc introduced the ASEAN Guide in AI Governance and Ethics, which prioritizes human involvement in AI-driven decision-making. So to summarize, Singapore's adaptive approach emphasizes flexibility, while the Philippines leans towards restrictive regulation due to limited innovation support. On ASEAN, well, ASEAN aims for a balanced and inclusive path for adaptive approach to AI. So in terms of our deliverables, so our informed consent guidance aligns with and could further contribute to this adaptive approach, enhancing human-computer interaction in AI. So this guidance is built on Fry's and T's models, and it ensures users stay aware, engaged, and in control. So to achieve this, informed consent must be embedded at a technical level, not only in the policy, but also in the technical level, seamlessly integrating with fast-evolving AI technologies. So in conclusion, our recommendations, as you can see on the slide on informed consent, support an adaptive strategy like Singapore's, and it also help encourage an innovative thinking in uncertain environments such as in the Philippines. And ultimately, these recommendations for governments help strengthen human-centered AI governance within regional blocs such as ASEAN. So that is all for my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Luis. Let's actually next we have Claudia Medeiros. She is with us from Brazil and our fearless co-chair who is a little under the weather. So we will be gentle with Claudia. She will do the best she can, and then we're lucky to have with us Rodrigo Roa from Chile who will wrap us up. Claudia, do the best you can if you're.
Thank you, Natalie. Can you hear me? So if I'm under the weather, I'm in San Jose, but I'm presenting online because I'm really under the weather and the weather is on top of me. So I'm a professor of computer science in Brazil. And please continue. I'll talk about the whole of Latin America plus Brazil. Please change the slide. Yes. So when we talk about Latin America, as you all know, but I'd like to stress, there are 33 countries. They're very different. There's no unified interaction system, whatever. So it makes a very diverse region under all aspects, political, educational, economic, and even IT infrastructure. However, all of these countries recognize the importance, ubiquity, and pervasiveness of AI with many national and international collaboration initiatives and internal initiatives. And perhaps the most important is a treaty signed by 17 countries to share best practices, collaborate, and obey responsible AI. So there you see 17 countries sign out of 33, and many of them already have national legislations. Please change the slide. Okay, so just to stress the discussions in this region, there was a study with a meeting in Chile in September this year concerning the Latin American Artificial Intelligence Index that analyzed all 19 countries concerning AI preparedness, enabling factors, research, development, and adoption, and governance. And as a result, this meeting and the indices and the evaluation reconfirm Chile, Brazil, and Uruguay as leaders in AI governance, research, development, and adoption in the region, followed by Argentina, Colombia, and Mexico. Please continue. Next slide. Okay, so I'm Brazilian. I'm very well aware of all the initiatives in Brazil. So first of all, all of them more or less concern responsible AI protection. And we also have our national GDPR equivalent law, which is called LGPD, which has been effective as of September 2020. And it takes responsible AI into consideration when it comes to privacy and the research. We have in the Brazilian Congress national legislation already passed at a very high level, plus additional legislation in different states underway. We have a first national plan, a 5-year plan that was published in July 2024, which is called AI for the Good of All. And the figure at the top corner is the folder, 84-page folder describing the plan and the actions. And the actions are towards research, infrastructure, training, AI and public services, innovation and businesses, and AI governance. And the government reserved already $4 billion to start supporting and enabling these initiatives throughout the country. There are first actions with call for action, with policies, and call for proposals in health, education, environment, agriculture, public services, social development, industry, commerce, and service. So these are call for proposals involving AI for public good in all these fields. We already have 2 national AI institutes, plus 10 different state-funded AI institutes, first of which started in 2018. Most of them are thematic, such as AI for health, AI for agriculture, or AI for business and manufacturing. And they vary from 30 to 40 researchers to 100 researchers, plus the equivalent of postdoc and doctoral students. And this is all I had to say. If you want to know more about Latin America, but in particular about Brazil, you can email me in Hova, or you can talk to me tomorrow, because hopefully I'll be over the weather tomorrow and at the university. So thank you so much, and please continue this very interesting. Bye-bye. Not bye-bye, I'm here. I'm muting.
It's my pleasure to introduce Rodrigo Roa, Executive Director of the Data Observatory in Santiago, Chile. And Rodrigo will take us through a story of the momentum around AI in Chile.
Okay, hi everyone. Well, the case of Chile first steps towards AI regulation. Despite not yet having a comprehensive AI regulation, Chile has updated a national AI policy as by 2024, several bills and legislative motions in progress and advisory background on regulation in this field. These advancements in AI will provide an initial overview of the state of the art in Chile, which will be valuable for subsequent discussion on the challenges and opportunities of a potential regulation. This is a summary of the state of the art that I obtained from the for the report AI regulation in Chile, challenges and opportunities in a dynamic landscape. First of all, well, from the Chilean government perspective, Chile has developed a national AI policy, first published in 2021 and updated this year, provides a framework for the ethical and responsible development of AI over the next decade. Its goal is to make AI a driving force in the country's growth, aligning with the OECD's definition of AI systems as computational tools that generate outcomes like predictions and recommendations to impact various environments. This policy outlines strategic guidelines to regulate AI responsibly and emphasize AI role in advances Chile's development model. The impact of this national AI policy has positioned Chile as a regional leader in Latin America, a index developed by CENIA, which is the National AI Center, in both indices regarding 2023 and 2024. Key strengths include data infrastructure, advanced human capital training, research, and connectivity. This policy remains in effect and is structured around 3 pillars. One is enable factors, 2, development and adoption, and governance and ethics. Well, this is the main structure. This is in Spanish for all, but there's the principles up there, the ethic and responsible use of AI, focuses on people. Then the AI as a service regarding a sustainable development, and the articulation and multi-sector AI in these principles. The 3 pillars, as I said yesterday, are the habilitance factors, the development and adoptions, and ethics and good governance. By the other side, we have the Chilean Congress. In late 2023, Chile had 5 AI-related bills under review, though none had progressed in the Congress by mid-2024. The first bill, introduced in April 2023, follows a risk-based approach similar to the European legislation, proposing governance structures and obligations for AI actors. The rapid technological advancements have intensified the debate on AI regulation, prompting the Senate's legislating AI initiative. This initiative involved 6 working groups from September to November last year, with over 70 experts contributing insight for effective AI regulation. Additionally, in May 2024, the government presented an AI bill to the House of Representatives, which will be further detailed later. And from UNESCO, based on the UNESCO recommendation on ethics of AI, the RIAM readiness assessment methodology was developed in 2023 to assess a country's AI readiness across 5 dimensions: legal, regulatory, social, cultural, economic, scientific, and educational and technological infrastructure. In 2024, Chile implemented this methodology with input from over 200 stakeholders across academia, public and private sectors, and civil society, making the first use of this tool in the region. This assessment aimed to identify strengths and gaps for aligning with UNESCO's ethical guidelines, providing recommendations in the 3 pillars: regulation, institutional framework, and capacity building, each prioritized for effective implementation. At this moment, as I said before, there's a bill regulating AI system by the government. And on May 7th, 2024, the Chilean government submitted a bill, message 63372, to the Congress to regulate AI systems, acknowledging the importance of this technology emergence in the country. The proposed legislation aims to establish a legal framework for regulating various AI applications, recognizing AI as a general-purpose technology, and the bill focuses on promoting human-centered AI systems that protect health, safety, fundamental rights, and consumer interest for potential harmful effects. It emphasizes ethical development within a shared ethical framework and identify specific high-risk AI applications that may challenge the legal order. For this reason, the proposed law identifies AI uses that pose significant risk, which are considered to hinder the legal framework. These risks are detailed below. Subliminal manipulation and exploitation of vulnerabilities, harm to personal honor, integrity, and sexual development, biometric categorization based on sensitive personal data, biometric identification and mass surveillance, risk to the right to equality before the law, facial scrapping, and emotional state assessment. The proposal acknowledges that other AI system uses could cause similar effects if they fail or are misused. Additionally, even if accurate, AI systems may produce incorrect or biased results, posing risk of manipulation or deception. Following the OECD's AI definition, the project adopts a risk-based approach, similar to the European Union's regulation categorizing AI systems into 4 risks of level, as my friend Gatesh already explained. And that's it. Thank you, everyone, for this invitation.
Thank you all for tolerating our slow start, but we hope that our tour of the world and its evolving AI landscape in policy and regulation is helpful to you. You also see in the AI Bill of Rights output informational section a lengthy report on China. We regret our Chinese co-chair could not be with us today. Neither could our sub-team member from Israel. There are a lot of ways that we can in RDA think about making it easier for people to travel or afford to join online. But time zones limit all of us. So you'll have to dig in for those. I invite you to adopt these guidelines. Contact any member of the working group for information about how you can adopt or adapt these guidelines to your work or organization. We're here to help you. And I'd like to thank Gautier, Anne online, and Ryan for being our co-hosts, and for our local hosts, especially our host organizers, Conair and UCR. Thank you for hosting us. We are pleased to be here. And I hope you all enjoy your time in Costa Rica. I'm standing between you and lunch, so please go have some and visit our outputs online.